I asked my school community if they wanted a challenge to help them to grow their LinkedIn network. A large number of them came back saying yes. Then I put a price tag on it and almost nobody bought. So I had two choices. I would either launch it anyway and just pretend that the numbers didn't matter, or I would actually figure out what was the gap between them saying yes and actually paying, and really work out what was that telling me. In the end, I chose the second option, and that has changed how I'm going to launch things from now on. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to be able to spot the exact traps that perhaps in your own business you could fall into, and it could end up costing you weeks of wasted effort. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, hey friend, hey, I'm Chelena. I'm a LinkedIn and a visibility strategist. And right now I am on day 15 of something that I'm calling Project Freedom 46. Basically, I turned 46 just over 2 weeks ago. And I looked at my business and I asked myself a really uncomfortable question. If I kept doing what I'm doing now, where would I end up? So for 100 days, I'm documenting everything: what works, what flops, what I learn, what it costs me. Essentially, I'm using my business as a case study. So no highlight reels, just the actual process. And today's video is one of those in the moment this actually happened or is happening, because I essentially built a challenge. I priced it, I vibe coded the sales page, and then I had to make a call on it. And that was something that I wasn't expecting to do. So let's get into it. A few months ago, inside of my community, the LinkedIn Strategy Lab, I ran a few polls, simply asking who would be interested in a challenge to help them to grow their LinkedIn network. And not just growing your network with random numbers, the kind that actually leads to conversations and leads and clients. So we're not just going after a bigger number under your name. And there was genuine interest. There was responses, there was conversations about it. In fact, let me read you a few of the responses, because these matter for where I go with this story. So let me pull it up. All right. So one person, they told me that they had a certain number of connections. I won't read out the number. They had a certain amount of connections and they were definitely down for the challenge. The second person went on to say, yes, they need more connections. The third person, I'm kind of editing the responses, but essentially this is what in essence they were saying. The third person went on to say that they've got a large network, but they're seeking additional fit connections. And another one went on to say they also have a large network, but they would love to learn more about connecting correctly. Right? So those were some of the responses that I got back from those polls. Now, at the time, I read those responses and I thought, great. They were indicating people that were essentially at different stages, but all saying some version of yes, there's demand. So I went straight into build mode. I went straight and started to build the sales page, create the assets, do all the things. But looking back now, and I want you to notice this because I completely missed this at the time, every one of those responses was actually saying something different. So one wanted raw volume, essentially. So get me from this number to this number. Another already had a large network, but wanted the right fit connection. So they were going after quality. One was somewhere in between, wanting to grow their network, but wanting to learn the skill of how to do that correctly. So that's not one audience with a shared need. There was at least 3 different buyer groups with 3 different motivations, all technically saying yes to the same poll question, but I didn't slow down to separate that out. I just saw the enthusiasm and moved straight into building. So what I built was the LINGO challenge, and LINGO stands for the LinkedIn Network Growth and Opportunities Challenge. essentially 30 days running from the 1st of September to the 30th, with all manner of prompts, resources, daily live videos where I would be teaching on a specific element of network building. So week 1 was all around finding and identifying the right people to connect with. Week 2 was all around actually connecting with those people to grow your network intentionally. Week 3 was all about nurturing those connections into actual relationships and conversations. And then the final week would have been where we activate those relationships. So turning your network into like real opportunities. So whether that's clients or collaborations or introductions. As I said, I'd be coming on live every weekday for like half an hour sessions. They were going to get daily prompts, the community for accountability. And I had genuinely built something that I was really proud of and really excited to deliver. So I priced it. It was £197. It was an early bird offer prior to getting to that price. But yeah, the sales page was built. I'd added in my testimonials from people who had gone through previous challenges. I even put a guarantee on it. So I said, if you show up, if you do the work and your network does not grow meaningfully by the end of it, I personally would help them to get to where they wanted to go. So on paper, it was a strong offer. And I still think like it's a strong offer. But on launch, there were no signups. And I want to be really honest with you here about how I felt in relation to that lack of sign-up, lack of engagement, because I think this is where a lot of coaches, consultants, and experts get stuck. When something that you build and you labor over, you pour into, doesn't sell the way that you expected it to. The easiest place for your brain to go is that there's no real demand. People don't value what I put out. And I actually did a video last week, I will link to it, where I was speaking about this exact thing, that sometimes the value that you have isn't actually valued. Another place that we can end up going to, right? The second place that we go after that kind of there's no demand is that we think maybe it was too expensive, right? Maybe £197 is too much. Maybe I need to discount. Maybe I need to add more bonuses, turn around, touch the ground, do all the things. But I stopped myself. I didn't want to end up down that kind of spiraling staircase, right? I stopped myself. And what I did was I went back and I looked at the data, very similar to another video that I had done about the 105 sales calls and the objections that I had got. I had used AI to help me to see why some people bought and why others didn't, and some of the objections that they had given to me. So in this case, what I did was I went back and I looked at the responses, the comments, what was actually said. So I wanted to see the data for what it was and not just see the compliments, not just see the kind of polite responses. And when I did that, here is what I noticed. And I think that this is the part that's particularly useful for you, especially if you are building something currently. So first of all, a poll response costs nothing, right? It's a click. It's a moment in time, a moment of agreement that they probably forget that they've even agreed to. So yeah, you get responses like, yeah, that sounds great. It takes zero effort. There's zero risk. Whereas a sales page is completely different. It's a completely different ask. You're asking somebody to part with their money, to hand over their card details, and to believe that this thing that you are offering, when compared to all of the other things that are pulling on them for their time, their attention, their resources, needs to move up that list of priorities. So this is the thing that I need to move forward with. This experience has really shown me that interest and intent are not the same currency. And I had been treating them as if they were. The second thing that I learned was that none of those responses had any urgency in them. when I go back and I look at the language, there was a lot of, I would love to, I'd be down for that, I'd love to learn more. That all speaks to desire. And yes, desire is real, it's genuine, but it's very future facing. There's no, I need to get this sorted now. My business needs this to be resolved because of X. There was no urgency in their language or no signaling that this was something that was a nail that they were sat on and needed to get off of. And my sales page, if I'm honest, didn't do the best at giving them that urgency either. It didn't say specifically why it mattered, like more than waiting until perhaps it would run again, or it didn't stress why this needed to be done now. And so I'm learning that desire without urgency, like it doesn't lead to conversions. It essentially just encourages people to sit there kind of nodding politely, but not actually taking action. The third thing that I learned, and this one stung a bit because I hadn't separated the audiences. Remember, I was sharing that there was essentially 3 different motivations inside of those responses. My sales page was trying to speak to all of them with one general message about growing your network. But the person who had a large network but wanted to increase the quality of her connections was very different to the person who was just getting started and didn't actually know what the proper etiquette around connecting was. So I was trying to write a message that would land for everyone. And I think the result was that it actually ended up landing for no one. The fourth, and honestly, I think this one is probably the most uncomfortable. I kind of just expected that my community would buy it because they were the ones who had said yes in response to the polls. And so I didn't do any meaningful marketing outside of the lab. I just assumed that that internal enthusiasm was enough to be my launch strategy. And consequently, it wasn't. I think like wanting something in a poll and prioritizing it enough to pay, enough to invest in it is completely different. And especially in a season of business where things are quite hard. And as I said, there's competing demands and requests. People are being pulled in all directions. And so if you have been following this series, right, this is going to sound familiar because I feel as though I keep bumping into versions of the same blind spot. With one of my other programs, it was that I had built something and barely marketed it at all. With my community pricing, I had changed my business model, my tiers for pricing based on schools' change to their incentive for members, and not because it actually worked for me and for my actual business. And then now with LINGO, I mistook what I'm going to call polite interest for real demand, right? So same root issue, just different outfits every time. And that's hard to say, but it's the truth. And so I want to share with you what I've decided, because I actually want to walk you through the decision and not just the outcome. So I'm delaying LINGO. I'm delaying the challenge. I'm not scrapping it. I still believe in the approach. I still believe in the pillars and the way in which I was going to help people to grow their network, because having an intentional, focused LinkedIn network genuinely changes somebody's business. I've seen it with my own business. I've seen it with the people that I work with directly, but I'm not going to launch it until I fix like some very specific things. So the first thing that I want to fix is making sure that I've built in a real reason to act now. When somebody has that question in their mind, like, Chelena, why should I take the challenge? Why should I join now? I want to make sure that that is clearly articulated and they don't think they will just wait and take it at some point. The second thing is around splitting my messaging so that it actually speaks to the different people who are often hiding inside one yes. right? So as I said, the person who is chasing their first 500 connections is very different to the person who already has 500 plus and wants the right 500 people. The third thing that I'm going to make sure I do is to market outside of the walls of my community. So instead of assuming like internal goodwill will be my launch plan, because as I've said, clearly that was not the way to go. So over the next few weeks, you're going to see me actually do this in real time. I'm going to rebuild the sales page. I'm going to test the messaging for the different audience segments. I'm going to be really transparent with you about what actually moves the numbers, moves the needle, because the whole point of this experiment, this project, is to show you the real process, not just the win at the end. So if you are building something right now, it could be a program or a challenge or a course, whatever it is. Here's a question that I would love to leave you with, and I would love it actually if you would comment and let me know. Have you ever launched something that you were sure that people wanted, based purely on how they had responded to a poll, an email, a survey? And then when you actually went live, like the numbers didn't match to the responses that you got. And I would love to know what you did and how you actually felt or responded to that particular scenario. Please drop it in the comments below, because it will be helpful for me, but also helpful for others who are reading and perhaps encountering a similar situation. So I am documenting this entire 100-day process, mistakes and all. And yeah, I hope that you're along for the ride. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.